right, welcome everybody. Good morning or good evening from wherever you guys are joining. I'm really happy to welcome you at our webinar about our unified endpoint management. And as you can see, I'm not alone today. So my name is Dennis Westhoff. I'm at RayNet sales team for about 6.5 years now. And today I will guide you a bit through the slides about RayManageSoft Unified Endpoint Management. And I also brought you a technical expert, which is my colleague Scott Keating. And yeah, please introduce yourself.
Hi, as Dennis says, my name's Scott Keating. I'm a senior IT consultant here at RayNet. I've been here for just over 9 years, and I do product implementations, upgrades, deployments, training, etc.
All right, thanks. So Scott will guide you through the live session and just some organizational aspects. So we will record the session so you can access that later on if you missed anything or something like that. Please also, during the presentation, feel free to add any questions to the panel, and we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So we will start with some slides. I will guide you through the general aspects of why you would need a unified endpoint management at all. We'll tell you about the benefits and how we solve those problems. Afterwards, Scott will guide you through the live demonstration so that you get a little bit about look and feel of our solution. We will shortly discuss the feature highlights, and then we will go through your questions and hopefully answer all of them. So let's jump into that topic, unified endpoint management. We have a quite nice statistic right here. So you can see on the right side about the years 2019 until 2021. Most likely 2022 and even this year, so 23, well, the amount of vulnerabilities keep growing. You can see this is a statistic based on the NIST database, so on the US public database for vulnerabilities. And as you can see, it's growing and growing. So every year there are more low, medium, and high vulnerabilities in software. And on the left side, you can see in 2021, there were more than 25,000 software products that had a vulnerability in it that was reported. And about 66% of those were even exploited, so by hackers, by cyber criminals, or anything like that. And based on that statistic, you should have a patch management. You should keep your software portfolio up to date. And that's what we want to show you today, how we do that. So we'll have to speak about our data journey. And as you can see, let's start on the left side, global management. So if you're an IT infrastructure employee, architect, something like that, you will want to manage your global, central or decentral IT environment from one single point, one single platform. So it doesn't matter if you have like one office or if you act globally and have offices all over the world. We offer a solution where you can do the whole management from a single platform. How do we do that? Well, we start with the hardware discovery and the software inventory, meaning that we find out what's in your environment, so which clients, which servers, which SNMP devices, printers, stuff like that, what's in your environment and what software is on those devices. And in combination with our solution like the technology catalog, we normalize those data, and we can then show you which software has a vulnerability, so based on the NIST database, which software is, for example, end of life, end of support, so which of those should be updated, so even is there a new version available on the market. And based on the information that we find out with that, we can also offer you the solution. That means we have the world's biggest package store, which includes prepared software packages that you can directly roll out. So they are quality controlled and pre-configured. And with our unified endpoint management, you can even automatically download those and deploy those without manually working on it. And with that solution, we can solve the third-party patch management and the whole software deployment. And let me give you a real-life example for that. So we have a customer case, and on the left side, you can see the fingerprints. So the raw data that we inventoried, and it was about 100K fingerprints. We recognized those, so 94,000 fingerprints were recognized and 8,500 were duplicates, so we skipped those. And that data was then normalized and enriched with our catalog. So like about 70,000 products were enriched. There also were like 18,000 not normalized, not enriched products, as well as 2,000 ignored products. That's totally normal because that might be individual software, for example, which is handled a different way internally. Of course, if you think about that use case at your side, you can also add that software to our catalog, and it can then be normalized and enriched as well. But let's stay with the normalized data. Then we have a process which has a look at the vulnerability score. So if you know this database, that's good. If not, let me explain real quick. There is a vulnerability score starting from 1 and which goes up to 10. And if a software has a vulnerability that has a score of 1, that's fine. You should fix that in any time. If it has a vulnerability of 10, well, then it's urgent. So it's a high chance that someone will exploit that and use that against you. And in this case, we have automatically sorting of vulnerabilities, which means every score that is higher than 8, for example, will go directly to the security department and they will directly react in any way. And for all vulnerabilities that are smaller than 8, we have a process which is you can do an individual packaging. So if it's a special software, for example, we can also support you with that. As you might know, we have one of the oldest and biggest software packaging factories. And of course, for all the standard software, you can also use our package store to automatically deploy that software, to fix that vulnerability and to update the software. And if you have a look below the vulnerabilities, of course, same goes for end of life, end of support. So based on our catalog, you will know which of your software is end of life, end of support, and whether there is a new version for that software. And the same story, most of the packages can then be updated with our package store, also automatically, and the rest of the software can be done by individual packaging. And there's also a use case, of course, end of life, end of support in combination with vulnerabilities. I guess that makes sense because software that's close to end of life, close to end of support, or even behind that will have more vulnerabilities and a higher chance for that. And for that software, we have the options to replace it. So maybe there is no update for that available. So you will want to take another software, and alternatively, update it if there is an update available, or just uninstall it if there is no update and no alternative, or it might also be out of use for your company. And of course, in the best case, this is the biggest part, long-term scene, up-to-date software. Yeah, there is software in your environment that's up-to-date, that's safe, all good, no need to act. And all the updates, all the patches will then be deployed with our unified endpoint management. And as mentioned, that's a real life example. And of course, you just don't do it one time, but you do it permanently. Yeah, so every day you automatically check your environment. Is there a new vulnerability? Is there something that's close to end of life, end of support? Is there a new update that I might want to roll out? And to give you a quick overview of your benefits using our unified endpoint management, of course, you have an overview of all your endpoints in your environment. So all of the software and hardware that's out there, and you can protect those. And so proactively update it, keep it up to date, close vulnerabilities and stuff like that. And of course, as a company that has a lot of knowledge about software packaging, no interference for your end users, meaning we install the updates silently, maybe if required, at out of office times and stuff like that, so they can keep their work up. All of this is done with dashboards, reports, so you can also do strategic decisions, and it will minimize your effort and your costs, because you can focus on other stuff. You can focus maybe on the packages that you have to create individually, but you don't have to manually update, for example, the standard Office software, but you can do that automatically with the unified endpoint management. And now you will get the chance to have a look at the product itself. And therefore, Scott will guide you through the live environment. So let me hand over the screen to you.
Thank you, Dennis. So hopefully everybody can see my screen.
It looks good.
Okay, so Unified Endpoint Management is a multi-tenant, modern day systems management product. It operates within a container, so it can be deployed within a cloud environment, or it can be deployed on premise, and it's web-based. So you access it obviously via a web browser, and once you've logged in to the right tenant, you are faced with the home screen. Now, the home screen shows you some instant information about your environment, things like how many managed devices you have, how many devices have been assigned to a certain package, how many devices are in certain groups. The one I like the most is it shows you the actual spread of your various operating systems within your managed environment. So as Dennis also mentioned, UEM comes with a number of dashboards and reports. So I'll just quickly show you a couple. So the deployment status gives you an overview of your package deployment throughout the environment, and actually tells you if the installation was okay, if it failed, or if they're pending. You can actually drill down into the pie chart and actually see which devices have failed or pending, because they're the ones of interest. If they've had success, you're not really bothered. And as Dennis also mentioned, the use case where it's based on our catalog with all of the NIST data, so we can actually see that sort of information within the UEM UI as well. So we can actually see different applications, different CVEs. You can actually select on, so if I select the Firefox, for instance, it actually lists the CVEs that are relevant to Firefox, to that version of Firefox, which is more important. As you can see, most of them are sort of in the mid-range. However, there is one that's got a score of 10, another one that's got a score of over 8. So those two you should be really concentrating on addressing first, and then moving on to the moderate ones. Okay, so in UEM, we call a managed device an endpoint. So the desktop's devices page just shows you a list of all of your devices that are managed. So how do they become managed? Well, UEM provides a pre-configured agent installation package, which you can download and then deploy via whichever deployment method you choose. And once it's been installed and comes up and has an active network, it will automatically communicate with UEM and send its first inventory data, and that action allows that device to be shown here. So we have an easy search in here. So if I just select one device in particular, we can actually see a summary of information that has been gathered from that device from inventory. We can drill down into the software, so we can either show the raw data, and we even identify if the application was installed as an executable or as an MSI. On the product side of life, we can actually map and show you actually what products are actually installed in relation to the actual applications. On the hardware inventory side, we actually show you obviously the hardware that's installed, so network devices, hard drives, your graphics card, your memory. The direct assignments. So this is one of the ways you can deploy software. So if you wanted a piece of software to be installed only on a specific device, you can use the direct assignments from that device to actually deploy that piece of software to it. And all you do is you press the assign package, you select which package you want to do it, and then you have an option. So by default, it's configured to be an optional package, but if you wanted it to be installed as a mandatory package, you can just enable this option, and that would make it mandatory. Screen is not very good.
What are you looking for?
I can't read this. It's too light.
It's too small. Yeah, it's the exclusive button. So forced.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So you can actually prevent a user from actually uninstalling it once it's installed, if you wanted to, by disabling this option. The install state tab obviously does what it says. It shows you the installation state for each of the deployed packages. And here you can see most of them are pending and one of them is optional. And the device logs just gives you UI access to the log file, the various log files that the UEM agent sends up on a regular basis. So how does UEM get software to deploy? So there's three methods. You can either upload your own MSI or executable package, or you can actually have UEM download one of the myriad of packages that we have in our package store. And it's just a simple case that you can just browse. You require at least 3 characters to find something. And here you can actually show once you've got you selected your application, you can decide what version you want as well. So this is quite good just in case you've got corporate policies saying that you only have to have X version in your environment because you haven't validated any later ones. Or if you want to test our modern day patch management, this is a good way. You would select an earlier version first, deploy that to your test environment, and then create a rule for your modern day patch management. We'll go on to that later. And we have some options that you can configure here as well, which I can't see. So the first one allows you to say install it for all users or not. So if you say no, then it'll only install it for the user that is logged on. You can make it quiet, so there's no user interaction. And once the package is there, then we can actually go into some of the details. So the overview tab just gives you the status of the package that is within the applications page of UEM. But then we can actually drill down into the package and we can see what files the package contains. So here we can actually see there's a MSI transform file here for configuration, the app deploy. So as it's from the package store, it utilizes the PowerShell app deployment kit for its installation processes. You can add additional folders if you like. And if you select a folder, you can also upload a file, or you can say, well, I don't want a particular file, so I'll select a file and delete it. Same with a folder, you can actually delete the folder as well. Well, the Installers tab shows you how it's going to be installed, and like I've mentioned, it utilizes the PowerShell app deployment, which is why you see the app deployment here and not the actual 7-zip package itself. So it's just various command lines. One is for installing the application, one is going to be for uninstalling it, and how it can actually be detected. So once it's installed, as we use a policy-based management system for the agent, every time the agent downloads its policy, it goes through the policy, and every time it finds there's a package assigned to the policy, it will first check the system to see if the application, that package has been installed, and if it has, it won't install it. But if it is not there, it will then install it. So that's how we achieve desired state. And the way we tell it that a package has been installed is we actually use registry branding for non-MSI type packages, and for MSI ones, we'll just use the normal add remove programs and install registry key. However, you can still do registry branding in all package types. We have many customers that actually use that method for easy identifying that a package has been deployed by their IT department. So for dependencies, so you could say, well, this package requires a different program, and you can actually say, okay, it's a managed package. So if it's a managed package, that means it's a package that exists in UEM already. So if I say, well, 7-zip can only be installed if GIMP exists, what's going to do is when the agent goes and tries installing 7-zip, it'll look for GIMP, and if it's not there, it'll automatically download GIMP from UEM because it's a managed package, and then it will install 7-zip. If it's an unmanaged package, you have to give it more details, obviously, and then it'll actually check the actual system to see if it can actually find it. If it can't, then you're going to have to, it won't install, and you're going to have to remediate that. You can also use hardware information. So it has to have a certain CPU type, or it has to have at least 2 gigs of RAM to install, for instance. Or if you really need some in-depth granular focus, you can actually query WMI to get any sort of information to say, okay, well, if these values match, then you can install, otherwise don't. On the commands tab, you can actually enter additional actions. So you can either have it run actions before or after the main installation. So it's just like what you can do if you actually configure an MSI or deploy packages from any other software deployment system. You can actually choose if it should be using the user's privileges, or if it should have full access. So normally you would say full access, because 9 times out of 10, the logged on user is a normal user and doesn't have local admin or power user rights, so they can't install themselves. And then you go for some advanced options, so you can actually tell it if you want it to run it within a shell environment, or if it's got some commands, if it has, the installation has to wait until those commands are finished, etc. We're going to have technical sessions sometime after this to go through all of these in more detail. So I've mentioned registry branding. So here's an example of registry branding. So when we install the package, we'll automatically create this registry structure. And then what we'd utilize would configure the inventory scan to bring in this information. And then you can actually run a report and saying, okay, these are all of my managed packages that we've authorized via our supported software library. And we've also found other devices running this program, but they got the program outside of our IT processes. So that's a good way of checking up on your shadow IT. And then we've got targeting. So this is even more another way of focusing your deployment. So you can actually say, well, only deploy to Windows 10 with a specific build number, or only go to servers, only be on a certain language or a certain architecture type. Okay, so next is our modern day patch management. So I'm sure you're all familiar with traditional patch management, where it actually has a patching agent which runs along, gets compliance, checks what the system has in order to incorporate vulnerability analysis, and then it will tell your management server, well, it's got this, and your management server said, well, it needs these outstanding Microsoft or other vendor security updates. Well, the modern day patch management method doesn't do that. It just covers it based on the actual application itself and not security updates. So basically you create rules for a specific package and a version. So here I've chosen 22.1 for 7-zip, and I have 3 options. Now if you choose the update option, that will run all of the processes automatically. So once UEM discovers that there's a new version of this application in our package store, they will automatically download it and assign it to the relevant devices that already have the lower version of that application. So the next time those devices download their policy, they'll automatically download the latest version of that package and install it. If you choose download, then it will just download the package and keep it in the applications page, awaiting you to decide what you're going to do. Maybe you want to test it first. And manual, all that will do is it will just notify you that there is a newer version available, but it won't download or deploy. Going for endpoint security, so we provide the ability to update, change Windows 10, Windows 11 update management configuration. So if you go to system settings and security, all of the options related to Microsoft updates, we can actually change those here. So we can actually say, yes, turn on Windows updates or turn off it, just in case you want to use something else. Include additional Microsoft products. So all the options you see through the Microsoft operating system's own security settings is what we can actually configure here, including the actual user experience. And again, as this is a package type, it'll be downloaded the next time a device runs its policy and implement those changes on its system. And then if you then look at the settings, the security settings on that system, then you'll see the changes that got made by this package. They'll say managed by your organization. So group management. So groups, this is the other way of deploying software, and this is the recommended way of deploying software. So you can just enter a name in there. You can enter a description and you can give it a priority. So the higher the priority, the more importance it has. And if you wanted to, you can add a little picture. So what does a group allow you to do? So it allows you to add, obviously, devices to that group. And then it can actually, obviously, allow you to assign packages. So it makes it deployment easier by assigning packages to groups as well as devices to groups. And we can also add child groups as well. So you could create a global group for your whole environment, which would contain all of your devices, and then it would contain the packages that all of your users would use. And then you could create groups that have a department level, say, or a specialist a specialist job related group, and have the relevant software assigned there and assign the relevant devices to them. And all of the software assignment that is added to the groups are automatically added to the devices policies based on those devices being assigned to those groups. I think we've gone through everything.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's always a lot to show, but thanks for giving us a high-level overview. So let me take away your screen, and then we go back to the slides. All right, yeah, so you just got a quick insight, I guess, of what unified endpoint management powered by RayNet is able to do. As Scott mentioned in between, if you have like detailed questions and want to see some specific function, for example, or get a presentation of that, feel free to reach out to us. I just want to focus on the feature highlights once again, and you will hopefully recognize all of them right now. So let's start on the left side. Of course, we can monitor, but we can also fix your vulnerabilities of your software in your environment. And how do we do that? Well, we recognize software with our catalog, we normalize them, and we then link them to vulnerabilities and give you insights on how to fix those vulnerabilities. Doing that, or using our package store integration with more than 20,000 packages that are available out of the box, you can then automate your third-party patch management and save a lot of time, save a lot of effort, and fix your vulnerabilities, keep everything up to date. And as I can see, we already have some questions in the chat. We'll go through them in a second. If you want to have some more questions answered, there's a question panel for GoToMeeting. I hope it's visible for you. And please feel free to just add further questions to that. If that doesn't work somehow, or if you just remember a question later, feel free to get back to us. So let me go through that. All right, so there's one question I think we will have to discuss that in detail, which is about Active Directory usage for UEM.
Yeah, so we have a connector for Active Directory. So you can actually configure UEM to import your users and groups from Active Directory into UEM instead of actually creating your groups manually.
All right, and I see it's a customer that's already using RayManageSoft Infinity. So regarding the details of the questions, we will get back to you and just discuss that based on your use case. But as far as I see, that should be absolutely possible.
Yeah, the only difference between UEM and RMS is where RMS has the ability to create Active Directory policies. So you can actually use Active Directory client-side merging for your policies. UEM uses its own policy files, so it runs more in its native ManageSoft mode.
All right, so there's one question I guess I can answer, hopefully. So is the solution only available as software as a service? Well, we highly focus on hosted environment because that's, from our point of view, some kind of modern working. But as Scott mentioned, it's a container installation, so quite easy to install. It's of course possible to install it in your environment as well, or even in your hosted environment if you want that.
Yeah, and as it's a multi-tenant product, it's very useful for managed service providers. Yeah, so you can have this in your cloud, and then each of your customers can have their own tenant.
All right, so wow, a lot of questions. How do we get end-of-life data on applications? Quite easy. We have our very own catalog. So we do that automatically and manually as well. So data is provided by RayNet, by our team. And we also add, of course, the vulnerability as mentioned, but just to highlight that, based on the NIST database from the US government. I hope that answers the question.
If not, basically we use the software inventory data we gather from your devices and create fingerprints for each of those software applications and upload it to our catalog in order to then obtain all of that information from the catalog for those identified software.
Okay, and we have some specific questions about deployment that I would like to target afterwards, as they are pretty individual, I guess. We have one more about the package store, if that's licensed automatically. Well, let's keep it simple. The package store, of course, is available as a single product as well. So you can use the web interface for the package store, for the unified endpoint management. We are happy to provide you with a quote for that as well. That's a yearly subscription that you can easily then add to your unified endpoint management with some clicks, I would say. All right, so I hope I did not skip any questions.
Which ones do you want to leave to last?
So those ones, I think it's a little bit small for you, but we will target them afterwards. So discuss them individually, because I guess it's also important to understand the background.
Yeah, I can't read.
Yeah. We need a bigger screen for you. Yeah, and also a question about inventory, so about custom inventory. Yeah, we support that as well, but let's go into detail individually for that. So I would suggest that we close the webinar for now. And let me share our contact data, of course. So the next steps will be that you receive the slides from our marketing department, and then you have the direct contact data from Scott or myself, of course. You can also get back to anybody from the sales or technical team. And as mentioned, as there are still some questions open, still some questions getting sent in, we will get back to you regarding those individually and answer all of those afterwards. So Scott, thanks for presenting. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
And have a nice day.
Bye.